Happy New Year, everyone. Hey, I'm Matt Fyrohr. I'm the game director on the Elder Scrolls Online at ZeniMax Online Studios. It's another year, another time for another big announcement on Elder Scrolls Online. But first, 2019 was a great year for us. We were MMOG of the Year again. We went to Elsewhere. It was the first time we told a year-long story over the entire 4 updates of the year. It was really successful. We had lots of fun. But late last year, you'll know, we dropped some hints about where we're going next. We're really excited about what's coming next. We're really excited about what we're going to show you today. So thank you, all of you in the ESO community worldwide. ESO would not exist in its current form without the life that you bring to the game. So thanks. We are concentrating even more on the year-long story in a place that's very familiar to every Elder Scrolls player. We'll be talking about the year-long theme, the chapter, and how it all ties together. We're really excited about this, so welcome everyone to the Dark Heart of Skyrim.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Pete Hines and Rich Lambert.
That's just the Las Vegas talking. That's what that is.
Wow.
Yes, I am Uncle Pete, also known as Pete Hines from Bethesda, and with me in pants, so you know it's a big day, creative director at ZeniMax Online Studios, Rich Lambert. Rich, how are you?
Good. This is amazing. You know, the energy in this room is so hype. I get to be up here with you, We haven't done this since Morrowind.
Since Morrowind, yep.
And we haven't actually ever done this in front of a live studio audience before. And it's amazing to have so many people from the ESO community here together. And
thank you guys for coming and joining us. And of course, thanks everybody watching us online around the world. We're streaming on Twitch and Facebook, YouTube, Mixer, you name it. We're streaming on it. And for those of you watching us on stream, we've got some stretch goals today. As you may know, last year those stretch goals ended up with Rich getting a tattoo on his leg, despite his fear of needles.
Yeah.
What are our goals this year? If we hit 80,000 concurrent viewers, and that's across all of our different platforms combined, everybody is going to get a long-winged bat pet. Say that 5 times fast. And if we really knock it out of the park and reach 150,000 concurrent viewers, Rich and I are going to be doing the snow bear plunge.
And Pete, I got a tattoo because of the community. My hair's still purple because of the community.
We're
probably going to go for a swim.
Look, I've been practicing a couple of fingers at a time and a glass of cold water. Like I've already started training for this. It's happening. Rich, we just took a look at the trailer. From the trailer and the name, wild guess, we're headed to Skyrim.
We are. We're going to Skyrim. It is a little different than the Skyrim that you knew and kind of grew up with in TES 5, but it's going to feel familiar.
Yeah. Year-long adventure, kind of gothic, and
a little dark. You got to see in the trailer there. It's dark. It's gothic. It is this very interesting adventure that takes you all throughout familiar places and unfamiliar places.
So it's going to feel familiar to Skyrim fans. I assume we have some of those here. I mean, we've only released it like 47 times on 57 platforms at this point. If you haven't played it yet, I don't know what to tell you. We put it out as many times as possible. But at the same time, it's going to feel very different in tone and feel, not only to Skyrim, but even to the ESO we know, Skyrim as we know it in ESO, because there is some of Skyrim in ESO. There
is. At launch, we had the eastern portion of Skyrim. So the Rift, East March, Bleak Rock Island. And so we decided to focus more on the western side and, exploring what that was and some of the iconic places there.
And Dark Heart. Dark Heart of Skyrim meaning?
Well, we're going to actually take you to the Dark Heart of Skyrim.
Interesting. And this is, once again, this is going to be a whole year story. So this is not just sort of, hey, come check out this DLC when we release it here, and that's kind of the beginning and end of it. This is all year long.
Yeah, like last year with Season of the Dragon, we're telling this year-long connected story that all 4 updates are very heavily tied together to tell this narrative. That was something that we got a lot of feedback on last year with Elsewhere. They liked it. They wanted the story to be even more integrated, and so we did that. Each of the DLCs that we do are all very tied directly to the storyline.
And we do still have that big Elsewhere-like chapter this time around.
We do. So we're kicking off the year with quarter 1 in the dungeon DLC called Harrowstorm. And the story of Dark Heart kicks off there. There's a prologue quest and whatnot. And then it really kicks into gear in quarter 2 with the Greymoor chapter.
And Greymoor chapter is going to be going up for pre-purchase like right now. So all of you want to jump on it and pre-purchase. And we'll be talking a little later in the stream about some of the goodies you get if you want to go ahead and pre-purchase Greymoor, but that'll be available starting today. So we're getting a new experience in a familiar location. We're expanding the area of Skyrim a little bit. But like, what's new in what I'm going to be able to go and do, where I'm going to be able to explore? You mentioned, okay, well, you've been in the eastern part. We're going to head west. What does that mean?
We're going west. It's the site of King Svargrim. He hasn't joined the Ebonheart Pact, so it's a very different story. It's a little bit more political. It is also this very almost supernatural, dark storyline where there are weird storms ravaging the countryside. There's werewolves and vampires and witches, and it's kind of up to you to figure out what's going on and how they all, or if they all, interconnect.
How are the locations going to feel different biome-wise? Like we get one singular thing, you're breaking it up into a couple.
We're splitting it up like we do in all the other chapters. There's generally 3 biomes when we do that. The northern portion of the zone is what you would expect, ice and snow. That's incidentally where Solitude is, that big iconic city.
Blue Palace, yep.
I know you're very familiar with all that.
Yep.
You get to go have fun exploring that and seeing it in a different light, though. We're 1,000 years, or almost 1,000 years, before the events of Test 5. So it's going to be a little bit different. And then as you kind of progress through the zone, you move more towards the lowlands. So rolling hills, a little bit of that tundra Arctic, boggy feel. And I know, there's some interesting locations there that you're pretty familiar with.
Certainly both when it was in development and then afterwards just for fun. I spent a ton of time in Skyrim, both for work as well as just for having a good time and unwinding from work. So yeah, very familiar with Solitude and some of the other places that we're going to be talking about. You mentioned we're going to be visiting these places. It's 1,000 years in the past, but you guys are not doing the same kind of one-to-one that you did for, say, the Morrowind chapter, where it was much more about, hey, this part of the world from this game, and we're going to kind of recreate it. You're taking a different approach here in Dark Heart. Talk a little bit about that.
We want it to feel familiar, but we also want to go off and forge our own kind of thing. And so we're telling different stories. We're taking you to those familiar locations, Solitude and whatnot, but we're also going other places and really diving deep into the Dark Heart of Skyrim.
So this is going to take place both above ground and below ground. You and I both know the first question fans love to ask when you talk about going to a new place is, okay, how big is it? Is it as big as this? As big as down to the square inch? They want to know size-wise. But
especially this community.
But this is a little different in terms of if you just look at it on the map, it's actually not going to appear as big as some of the other ones. But that's a little misleading.
You're right. So it's not one whole contiguous space. There is the overland space, which is Western Skyrim, and then there is this huge underground cavern down below Skyrim called Blackreach. And we're going to spend a lot... You're going to get to spend a lot of time down there.
By the way, this is not hey, it's really big and it's this one thing over here. We're talking 30%, 40%?
Roughly 40% of the playable landmass for the chapter is down in Blackreach. You're going to go to never-before-discovered locations in Blackreach.
So, vampires, werewolves, they don't like being out. So they've got a whole underground...
They do. You're going to get to find out more about what that is and who's down there and why they're down there.
But it's not just underground. We're going to some places that we are familiar with above ground. We mentioned Solitude. Morthal?
Morthal is there, and it's that same kind of feel, that creepy, foggy, boggy kind of area. There's a twist in it in our timeline. Won't spoil it, but it's going to feel similar but different.
Interestingly, the thing I remember about Morthal in Skyrim is that's the first place I came across vampires while playing the game, because you go and there's the house burned down and the poor little girl, and you got to figure out what happened to the house, and there's a vampire lord who's trying to take over Morthal. So cool that that's in there, and that's going to be part of some story that you don't want to tell us.
I don't want to spoil it too much.
Is it safe to say it's vampire like-ish?
Yes.
And Blackreach. Now, Blackreach is an amazing area in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. It's also really friggin' hard to get to. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to get to Blackreach. You have to swim all the way to basically where you think the game is gonna, cut off the map through ice flows, and there's some random hermit in a cave who's like, oh, I have the magic fluzit that lets you get into Blackreach. Seriously. We were talking about doing this, and then I'm like, okay, well, what are some of the locations in Blackreach? Did you ever go there? And I was like, no. Where the hell do I get to Blackreach? And I'm wandering around I have to have some stupid artifact to get into here. And so once I got it, and I got to go in there, oh my God, it's amazing. It's this huge cavernous location.
Yeah, but that's also the beauty of what that team does, right? Where you can play the game for hundreds of hours and still not discover everything.
This massive underground.
It's really amazing. And so we tried to do a lot of the same things in ESO.
And so how do you take something like Blackreach that exists in Skyrim in some form, but what you're doing with it obviously is a much bigger scale. It's not just going to be to the size. Like you're going
we're
even bigger.
We're going bigger. You know, the places that you know from Test 5 are there, but we're going deeper and exploring. There's actually multiple different types of biomes in Blackreach.
Within Blackreach itself?
Within Blackreach.
Nice.
So while you're wandering around, you're going to learn more about the creatures there and see some very interesting things. There's Dwemer Ruins down there. There's vampires down there, like you said, as well. So lots of cool stuff.
Dragon Bridge?
Dragon Bridge is in there, so you get to
Nice.
see that and explore that.
And there's some sort of on the dungeon side, underground, places I remember like Shadowgreen, which is a really interesting, unique cavern in Skyrim, very different thematically. Labyrinthian, any chance we see?
We have both those. So Shadowgreen is a delve, where you get to go and explore that. It's a little bit different. We're 1,000 years in the past, so some of the trees probably aren't as big as they would be. And then Labyrinthian is a very large public dungeon. So you get to go around and explore that and just see what all that is in there.
But again, all of this is kind of you guys taking some locations that we know, but making it your own in terms of how big they are, what's going on there. You're not really tied, given the difference in time to
we
to
get
what's
to do
going
our
on in
own
those
thing and
places.
tell our own stories, which is fun.
There's a lot of new ground to cover in Tamriel when you've got that, but there's more than geography. Talk to us about the story. Like, what is the story that you're telling across the year of Dark Heart of Skyrim? What is it about? What are players going to experience?
It is a very dark story. It is, I guess, the closest thing you could relate it to is Revenspire. For those that play that, that feel, that really dark feel. It centers around vampires and werewolves and witches and people disappearing, and it's very different than what Elsewhere was. Elsewhere was, dragons, which were really cool, big, bulky creatures, but it was in the land of the Khajiit, and the Khajiit are, these little bit off the wall, very happy-go-lucky people, and that's not what the Nords are.
At all. And you said this is similar to how we've done in the past, like what we did with Season of the Dragon. So functionally, Rich, is it breaking up into the same number of DLCs, the same types of DLCs? What can players expect?
So it's the kind of typical 4 major updates over the course of the year. There's 2 dungeon DLCs, there's the chapter, and then there's also the story DLC that culminates the entire year.
Okay, and 2 of those you mentioned, so Harrowstorm and
Greymoor.
And Greymoor, and then 2 more coming.
We have 2 more coming that we will talk about at a later date, maybe E3.
Yeah, all right. Now, one of the things you guys do a lot when you do these chapters, when you do these DLCs, is you'll bring NPCs back that are player favorites, either from previous storylines in Elder Scrolls Online, and you and I both laughed when we were over there waiting to come up because we got a big reaction
with Lyris.
Yeah, is our.
She is back.
Awesome.
Lyris Titanborn is back for sure. She is. She is your guide and mentor throughout the entire year. Jennifer Hale. Jennifer Hale is back as the voice of Lyris as well. So that's really exciting. And then, one of the things that the team really enjoys is trying to bring back characters that people really resonate with.
So who else could we expect besides Lyris?
Everybody's favorite, hated Dark Elf and Narcissus Dren is back. We are going to Skyrim, so of course Rigert the Brash is going to be back. Of
course.
You're going to get to see, and learn more about who he is and what he's all about. And then we are also going to have some members of the Raven Watch return.
Excellent. So we've got some places that we know from previous Elder Scrolls games, some characters that we're familiar with, and this really interesting story. It's a lot of mystery going on, but one thing we know for sure is that there's no mystery about how excited your team is in doing this and the things that they're doing in Dark Heart of Skyrim. We spoke to some of the devs and asked them to share their thoughts on making Dark Heart of Skyrim and put together a little video. Let's take a look.
My favorite part of playing through Skyrim has always been that layered storytelling, that turn a corner and something new is going to happen and some new adventure is going to kick off, right? And that influences us in the way that we build the Elder Scrolls Online, and it's certainly influenced us in the way that we've been building Dark Heart of Skyrim.
As a storyteller, it's always exciting to take existing locations, existing lore, expanding upon that, and then merging it with new places that we're creating. We've seen Eastmarch before. We've seen the Rift. Now we're going to see what's going on the western half of the continent.
It's ruled by a guy named King Svargrim, who is not at all happy about the fact that he's got Yoren making friends with Dark Elves and Argonians.
King Svargrim didn't join the Ebonheart Pact. He's operating on his own, and he's not kind of happy with the rest of Skyrim.
The Reachmen are a threat, but there's more threatening the people of Western Skyrim now. It's a much more darker, more gothic story.
Every Nord knows the legend of Blackreach. They grow up hearing stories around the campfire. Nobody believes it's true.
It's one of the best moments from Skyrim. You descend down into the ground and you emerge into this absolutely insane dwarven city that you had no idea was under your feet the whole time. And we are taking that idea and we're kind of expanding upon it. Like, it's not only under that one part of Skyrim, maybe this cave extends throughout the entirety of Skyrim, and it's always underneath your feet wherever you go.
We know the Dwemer have been down here. What else has been down here? What other adventures are down here?
So deep underground, out of the sunlight, of course you're going to encounter vampires.
Vampires in Elder Scrolls, they aren't all evil, which is kind of scary too.
Where did this strain of vampirism come from? What makes these vampires scarier than other vampires we've encountered before?
We really wanted this part of Skyrim to really be familiar to people. If you're in Morthal, you know that if you go south, you're going to get to Labyrinthian. We want people to step into Solitude. We want people to remember those streets. I was going to flip a table if we didn't get to go to the Winking Skeever. Now, we didn't get to call it the Winking Skeever, but we still get to go there, and that was far enough for me.
It feels like going home to a certain extent.
Coming home and finding there's a new room waiting for you in the back of the house that's full of mystery, surprises, and a lot of danger.
You know it's a hardcore Elder Scrolls group when they get jazzed over a Winking Skeever reference. That's like the biggest response during that video is for the Winking Skeever. Okay, so we've talked about, we're going to do the story over the course of the entire year over these DLCs. And I want to actually skip ahead and not skip over Harrowstorm. Let's talk about Greymoor. And first of all, what is Greymoor?
So Greymoor is the name of the keep that's deep in the center of Blackreach. This is one of the seats of power for the Vampire Lord that resides there. And the story, touches a little bit on him, but the chapter overall is follows the same kind of pattern that they all do, in that there is roughly 30 hours of new content. There's main story, there's side content in there. You get to learn a lot more about the people that are living in the area, and then there's also all the other trappings that usually come along with that in 2 public dungeons. There's a number of delves. There's a new Dark Anchor-like form of gameplay in the zone called Harrowstorms. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's a new 12-player trial called Kyne's Aegis.
They love some 12-player trial.
They do. They're making Mike very happy.
And as we mentioned, Greymoor is available for pre-purchase. Now, there's 2 other things that are coming in this that are like interesting additions above and beyond everything that you just rattled off. And the first one is called Antiquities. It's a whole new system, and we put together a video talking a little bit about what it is. So let's take a look at that first.
Antiquities are really super exciting, particularly for a lore buff like me.
It's not combat, it's not questing, it's the first time we've added anything like this since housing. So it's a whole new verb to add to your adventuring repertoire.
So Antiquities is divided into 2 different kind of exciting activities. The first is scrying. Player will get an item called the Antiquarian's Eye, which is this really cool alien scrying device.
You'll have to use the Antiquarian's Eye to discover where this antiquity might be hidden. And when you find where that antiquity is hidden, then you'll have to excavate it. Once you've obtained the antiquity, then you've acquired this treasure from a bygone era.
You'll get to find things from eras that none of the Elder Scrolls games have touched yet. That should give players really cool insight into the history of Tamriel, which is something that we're all really super passionate about.
So I think this will fill a void for characters and players who want to explore more of Tamriel's history. Like, we're already in the second era, which is before any other Elder Scrolls game. But with Antiquities, we can reach even further back into the past and start getting scholarly insights and fragments of history from times even before that.
Another cool thing about the Antiquities system is that if you're looking for an opportunity to do something that doesn't involve you, like storming a cave and kicking an ogre in the face, this is a cool way to do that. You can go and travel the world and find cool stuff.
They're going to be in base game zones, they're going to be in chapter zones, DLC zones, and zones that we release going forward. They're going to be everywhere. It's mostly about you and the open road and the Antiquities you can find.
Yeah.
Okay, so Antiquities are a big deal, and as we said at the end of that video, not just specific to this part that we're adding to, it's going to incorporate the entire game.
Game-wide.
Past, present, and future.
And future.
But how does it work? How does Antiquities work?
So I guess the best way to summarize kind of the feel of the system would be Indiana Jones in Tamriel. So you are this person that is scouring the countryside, looking for interesting bits of lore, interesting relics. As the guy said on the video, this is not your typical questing and killing. It's a completely different form of gameplay where there's these 2 new mini games, 2 new skill lines that are associated with those mini games that help you get better at Antiquities. The first mini game, Scrying, is heavily influenced by a color or a shape match game. And that's what you do to zero in on the location of these objects. And then you have to physically go to that location in the world and do the excavation minigame, the digging minigame. And that is heavily influenced by like a minesweeper or battleship. And once you dig up the item, you get this cool thing. And the really fun part about this system is we try to appeal to all types of players. There's kind of something in there for everybody. Mm-hmm. When you dig up the object, obviously you want a trophy for your house. So there's tons of new furnishings. You can put them in your house. There are all kinds of new cool cosmetics for your character. There's all types of stuff in there. There's emotes. There's a brand new mount. And the really astute person watching that video might have seen it in that video there. I think we might show it a little bit later. And then there's a brand new type of gear that you can get called mythic items.
There's even PvP stuff.
There is. There's actually a siege weapon that you can get.
Nice. I mean, first of all, I think you had a solid Indiana Jones like that.
It's
Sold.
pretty cool.
Done. Mythic items. What are they? How do they work?
These are new, unique items. They only come at CP 160, gold level gear, so they're high quality items. They're different in that you can only wear one of them at a time, mm-hmm. and they have unique properties to them. So a couple of examples, there is a piece of jewelry that you can get that when you equip it, it increases your movement speed in combat. When you're outside of combat, it actually doubles that movement speed. So it's this new, interesting way to kind of play the game and equip your character. There's also a heavy chest that you can put on that when you block, it actually restores magicka.
So, but you can only have one of these.
You can only equip one of them at a time.
And again, the whole idea is for Antiquities is regardless of your play style, it's not go kill a bunch of stuff, or it's not a quest thing. This is at your own pace when you want, and there's going to be stuff for every type of player.
Every type of player, and the beauty is really, this is a system that you can do at your own pace. And so those players that might not necessarily have access to guilds or a ton of friends that can go into the trials and do the high-end stuff, they get some really cool new gear and new gizmos
they can do entirely on their own. Yeah. So we said two things, one of which is Antiquities. The other is you're revamping the vampire skill line. Dark Heart of Skyrim.
Revamping vampires.
So what can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, this year is heavily influenced by vampires, and so we thought it would be a really good opportunity to go back and look at the skill line and look at the experience. And the team looked at everything from the abilities to the passives. There's a brand new ultimate ability that I won't spoil with it, and it's this whole new package. So it's this fully realized skill line and experience. So you can, like necromancy, if you do overt vampire actions in the world, the justice system will report you. Guards, you'll get bounties. And then the team even looked at just the feeding mechanism in and of itself. And we kind of took a page from the Dark Brotherhood and Blade of Woe, where now feeding has these really cool new paired animations where you feel like you're actually feeding. And I actually saw a prototype animation just before this where you kind of sneak up behind somebody and you jump on their back and gnaw on their neck, and there's viscera and gore and kind of all this. Like, it is a vampire experience, which is really cool.
So, I am curious, when you're working with something like a vampire skill line, is sucking like a stated goal that you want to get to, or is it a thing that you avoid? Come on, it's a vampire thing. I'll get one vampire joke during the vampire stream? All right, that's my last one. I won't do it again.
Yes.
All right, so now, you know me. I have a pet peeve about this, which is I can't stand when a game company or publisher says there's never been a better time to play game X. Everybody always says that. But there's a lot of people who maybe either haven't played Elder Scrolls Online for a while or have never played it. And so the question is, without saying that, how do you explain to somebody, all right, I'm thinking about getting into this game, but you've got Dark Heart of Skyrim and Greymoor, we've got Morrowind, we've got all of this content. Like, how do I know where I'm supposed to jump into this and start?
So that's the beauty of Elder Scrolls Online, is it's really up to you. We don't have arbitrary level gates that prevent you from playing with your friends or going and exploring. You can, from level 1, go to the brand new content and play it and experience it and have a good time. You can play ESO any way you want. If you want to be a mage in heavy armor and a shield, you can do that. If you want to throw fireballs, you can do that as well. It's up to you. And we don't dictate to you how to play. If you want to play Elder Scrolls Online as a single player, you can do that. And then when you're ready, you can play with your friends.
So Dark Heart of Skyrim is something that, like these folks, you play a ton of the game, maxed out. There's still lots of content for you.
Tons of things.
But if you're new and want to jump in and have this be the first thing, it's not like, well, you got to go do this other stuff. You can start off in Greymoor, day
jump
one,
in
new
from
character.
level 1 and just start playing.
Cool. Now, I know that these folks, in particular, and some of our more hardcore players, were not super happy with us about something with Elsewhere, which is we decided not to do a collector's edition for Elsewhere. And they were like, dude, what the hell? Where's our collector's edition? We love the collector's edition. So we heard you, and we're doing one this time around.
God bless.
So we are doing a physical collector's edition. It comes with a really sweet statue, some collector's coins, a map. Every Elder Scrolls game has to ship with a map. I think that's a law. A ton of digital goodies, a whole bunch of stuff, including an emote pack that, because we haven't driven Arrow to the Knee completely into the ground yet, we had to have an Arrow to the Knee emote. And it comes with a free month of Elder Scrolls Online Plus, which you can either use for yourself, or if you've got a friend, if you're already an ESO Plus subscriber, you can gift it to anybody that you want. So, yay. And as always, I mentioned before, pre-purchase available for Greymoor. There's all kinds of digital goodies available if you want to pre-purchase Greymoor. It includes an all-new mount, the Hullbreaker Warhorse, and if you pre-purchase Greymoor, you can start using the mount immediately. So you don't have to wait until Greymoor comes out. You'll get the mount right away and can start riding around. Go to the website for all the details and info on everything in the CE and in the pre-purchase goodies. So, okay. I said I wanted to start with Greymoor, but now we're going to go back to the first one that's coming out. So the first one is new DLC. It comes out this quarter. Harrowstorm. It's going to be on PTS next week.
Next week it'll be on PTS.
All right. So what can you tell us about Harrowstorm?
So Harrowstorm is, a 2-dungeon DLC. It contains the prologue, which really kicks the story off for the entire year. And the dungeons themselves, one is called Icereach. It takes you to the Sea of Ghosts. And you learn more about these really weird storms. I touched on those a little bit in the Icereach Coven. And the other dungeon is called Unhallowed Grave. And that is an ancient burial site that was under protection for some reason, was heavily guarded, and has since kind of been forgotten about. And there's a group or somebody in there digging up whatever was entombed in there.
And you said before that you're really trying to do more of the story earlier on and not just waiting for, okay, here's this big chapter in quarter 2. So Harrowstorm's going to include much more story in terms of what's going on.
What you find out in the dungeon lays a very strong foundation for the entire year.
Now, the Harrowstorm update is not just about that DLC. You're also doing a bunch of updates to the game itself as part of that release later this quarter. What is that going to include?
So back in July, I think it was, we posted a performance roadmap update up on ElderScrollsOnline.com. And we've been updating it over the course, every month. We've been updating, here's the progress, here's where we're going with this. You saw a little bit of that at the end of the year with some of the memory improvements that we did. But this year, the very first really big one is the patching overhaul. Mm-hmm. And that's going to cause everybody, or require everybody, to re-download the entire game. But once you do, the game's going to be significantly smaller on disk, almost 30 gigabytes smaller, which is massive. And it's going to result in the game running faster, loading faster, frame rate's going to be a little bit better. And patches going forward are going to be smaller.
Shorter downtimes, smaller patches.
Yep.
Improved stability, all of that stuff is coming, starting with, and this isn't the only one, but this is the start of...
This is the start of the entire year. Like, that's the other big part of this year-long story, is the performance aspect of it.
All right, so Harrowstorm coming out Q1. We put together a video to talk a little bit more about what you can expect. Take a look.
This year-long adventure into the Dark Heart of Skyrim starts with Harrowstorm, which focuses on 2 dungeons, Icereach and Unhallowed Grave. Discovering the mysteries in these 2 dungeons are a gateway to the larger Dark Heart of Skyrim. Icereach is this island in the middle of the Sea of Ghosts, and there's this mysterious storm swirling about. So an expedition was sent there to figure out what's going on, and they haven't returned.
Once the player arrives on the island in search of the missing expeditionary force, they come across Lyr's Titanborn, and they team up with her in order to discover what the witches are doing on the island and put a stop to this mysterious storm. As you travel across the island, you're going to come across multiple witches, each with their own type of magic.
Some are going to use fire. Some are going to use electricity. And they also have other minions and creatures that they're going to bring to fights.
Unhallowed Grave is this mass burial of bones that has been underground and sealed away for thousands of years by the Pyre Watch. And it's been so long that what exactly is down here is actually unknown to them.
And they appointed people to watch over it. They had one job to do, and they couldn't do that right because somebody broke in.
Not only is the player going to have to deal with the Nordic mercenaries, but the defenders that the ancient Pyre Watch left here to guard the tomb. And you are discovering what was left down here and what the Nordic mercenaries are looking for.
That's a boss.
You want to know what is that, Rich? Are you going to tell us what that is?
You'll find out next week.
Nice. So we've got Harrowstorm coming mid-March, but it's going to be on PTS next week. We've got Greymoor coming out in Q2. Anything else you want to tell us about what's coming in 2020, maybe second half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, we've only touched on quarter 1 and quarter 2. We're going to talk more about quarter 3 and quarter 4 at E3, but one is going to be a dungeon DLC, and the other one is going to be that story DLC.
Okay, but we got all these people here. Like what if we just promise, just in this room, what if you just tell us?
Just in this room.
Just us. We won't tell anybody else. Just like a little tease, like something.
We're under NDA.
All right. I like that. That's good. So as long as it just stays in this room.
Just in this room.
Just in this room
What
between
happens
us.
in Vegas stays in Vegas. You know.
I like that. Okay. I like that. Okay, how about this? If you are at all interested or familiar with lore about the Reach, you might be really excited about the coming fourth quarter.
Okay, so maybe so you're telling me there's a chance we're going.
There's a chance.
Okay, we'll find out more at E3.
Yeah.
Okay, but for now we got Harrowstorm. We're looking forward to Greymoor. Any last words? Any last thoughts you want to share with folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think this year is poised to be remarkable for ESO. You know, we've got all this really cool new content, these new systems coming in. The community is continuing to grow and expand. We have actually seen, you know, our Russia community grow significantly over the past year or two. So we're actually going to localize ESO in Russian. So text only. There's a lot of friggin' text.
That is no small undertaking.
But yeah, there's going to be a fully supported official localized Russian SKU.
That's awesome. And I mean, entirely due to the community in Russia. I mean, those folks that support the game have been so awesome. And one other thing I wanted to ask you, Stadia. We were part of the Stadia stuff, and we got a few questions like, hey, what's up with that?
We get that a lot, yeah, and we haven't forgotten about it. We're still hard at work on that, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that at E3.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's about it. Rich, thank you so much for all the details.
This was a blast. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thank you guys so much for joining us in person, and for everybody who joined us on the stream. We are going to go right to the post show, but before we do, let's take one more look at the trailer for Dark Heart of Skyrim.
Hell yeah!
To the official post show. We are live in Las Vegas at the HyperX Arena. Super excited to be here. This is our first time with a live audience.
It's so cool.
And thank you so much for joining us on stream. We are going to be talking with everybody for the next hour or so, getting into a little bit more detail about everything that we just announced on the stream. So, first off, let's introduce everybody. I'm Gina. I am one of the community managers for The Elder Scrolls Online.
I'm Jess Folsom, Senior Community Manager on the Elder Scrolls Online.
And we have Rich Lambert with us, who you literally just saw. His hair.
I just want to call out his hair is purple, as promised.
Purple, yeah. Still purple.
And do you guys want to introduce yourselves too?
Sure. I'm Lehman Tuttle. I'm the lore master for the Elder Scrolls Online.
My name is Kyle. I am an ESO stream team partner, and I stream at Kyle Dempster Studio. Well, it's twitch.tv/Kyle Dempster Studios.
Nice plug.
And my name is Cash. I'm from the Lore Seekers Podcast. You can find us at loreseekerspodcast.com.
All right, so let's dive right in. So we just wanted to talk about our viewership milestone rewards. So I'm happy to let you know we did unlock the long-winged bat pet. So all you have to do to qualify for that is to log into the game and kill one monster. We'll have more details on the ESO website tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. We did not hit the snow bear plunge number, but y'all have been so great and we love you so much, we're gonna do it anyway. Sorry. So keep an eye out for details. Are you gonna come with us?
I will recruit some devs. How's that sound?
Yes.
Leland.
Mike? Not doing it.
Also, the Greymoor chapter is available for pre-purchase right now on the ElderScrollsOnline.com. We have an article up on the website that will help you choose what version is best for you. You get a lot of really cool pre-purchase rewards, including the whole Breaker War Horse, which you can get right now. There's actually people running around in the game with it right now, I'll bet. And there's also a physical collector's edition. We heard you. We know you wanted one, so that one is available for pre-purchase right now as well. And it comes with this really cool vampire lord statue, not Gina's chest. We also have a sale going up on the Bethesda merch store right now, 10% off. The code word is Skyrim, and you can get 10% off select items. There's also a whole bunch of really cool new Dark Heart of Skyrim items, including the reliquary.
The reliquary here, yeah.
Again, I'm not pointing at Gina.
I'm not up for pre-purchase. All right, so what did we just announce? We announced our brand new chapter, which is Greymoor, the new year-long story, which we're calling Dark Heart of Skyrim for this year, the Harrowstorm DLC. There's a lot that we need to dig into in this show. And as Jess mentioned, that you can pre-purchase Greymoor now. We know there's been a little hiccups on the website a little bit, but if you're having issues getting in there, we are working really hard to make sure that you can get in and pre-purchase. Again, you can check out all the website for all the different items that you can get, including the physical collector's edition. So next week, we're kicking off with Harrowstorm, coming to the PTS, which is super exciting. Includes 2 new dungeons. The prologue quest is going to be on there. We have the patching overhaul, the performance updates, which we are going to be talking about in a couple minutes. But first,
we've seen some questions coming up in the community in the last 45 minutes or so since we finished our announced stream. There's one that we want to address, and we have seen some questions from our players on PlayStation 4 asking, where is the Greymoor chapter? Why can't I pre-purchase it yet? So due to circumstances outside of our control, the chapter is not available for pre-purchase at this time on PS4, but please know that we have you covered. We will make sure that you're able to get the pre-purchase items. You'll have the opportunity. So just keep an eye on the official ESO website and social channels for more information.
One of the other things that I saw coming up a couple times was with Antiquities. There are some folks asking if we're going to accommodate colorblind mode for those that can't see the colors in some of the puzzles. We are definitely taking that into account, so have no fear. You will still be able to participate.
That's why it's shape
really
and
good question. Shapes and colors. Yeah. All right, so Rich, you just have a few moments before you need to head out, so we don't want to take too much of your time. But we did want to start
He'll
with.
Be here.
Well, yeah, he'll be here, just not out in cyberspace.
You're not getting away that easy.
So we want to kind of address the elephant in the room first, which is game performance, because we know this is really important to a lot of people.
Everyone.
So can you provide an update on sort of the current state of performance? Because I know some people maybe haven't played in a few months, they've heard some things. What's going on with performance right now?
Well, I think that the first big thing is we actually had a successful Undaunted event. We finally got that done. The LFG tool, the team worked really, really hard on it. They completely rebuilt it from the ground up, and it withstood this event, which is great. There were a few things that shook out of it. We're still working on it. It's not perfect yet, but we're still going to continue to work on it and make it better. But it made it through, which was great.
Well done, guys.
Yeah.
We tried. Trust me, we were watching and we were sweating, but yeah, it made it, which was great.
Great work.
So update 25, this is coming to PTS next week. This is going to include the patching overhaul, frame rate improvements, but what does that actually mean to a player? What are they going to notice from that?
Well, the big thing is, the game is going to be smaller on disk. You have to re-download the entire game, but once you do that, it's going to be roughly 30 gigabytes smaller, which is good.
Does that also mean that the patches after that will also be smaller?
They will be smaller going forward.
On all platforms.
On all platforms, which is really important. We know that's a pain point for players. Yeah. Yep. And the other big part of this is just the game is going to load faster. It's going to load more reliably, less infinite load screens of doom. I know that's the thing that happens a lot, or frequently. And your overall frame rate's going to be better because of the loading system can just load the assets faster.
So question, because this game's big and it takes people a while to download it based on their internet. Is there any kind of incentive players might have to do this?
Yeah, so what we're going to do for a period of time after it goes live is there's going to be a free pet in the Crown Store that you can purchase. I think it's the Crimson Torch Bug.
Crimson Torch Bug pet, yeah.
I know that is a pet that there's a lot of players that are very interested in that, so that'll be there as kind of an incentive to, hey, go through, re-download the game, but get this really cool, neat thing.
I think that was one of the critters in Murkmire, wasn't it?
I saw a lot of people asking before, like, how do I get that torch bug?
Yeah, that's
people want it.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned the frame rate improvements. That's across all zones, like even in Cyrodiil?
Even Rawlcop? During prime time?
Yes.
No.
Even Cyrodiil. So keep in mind that this isn't a silver bullet that magically fixes all problems, all ills. This is the first step in many performance improvements that we're working on, but is a very good first step.
Okay.
Can I butt in again and
Please
just say, so Rich, my game crashes a lot. I might be a little bit of an add-on addict. I don't know. I'm not admitting it yet. I'm not ready for that. It's only 100, okay?
You only have
or more. Will this help at all, any of these, with crashes or anything like that?
So it won't help your problem with add-ons.
Specifically you.
You're special, Kyle.
But we actually have an incremental going out that fixes a number of memory leaks. So I know players have been talking about, I'm in Cyrodiil, for instance, playing for a few hours, and the performance just kind of goes down. It takes longer to load. My frame rate doesn't work very well. And we fixed a couple of memory leaks specifically to address that.
That actually went out this morning. That was the
There you
patch
go.
today.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, we're hard at work on all aspects.
Thank you. Save me.
So since this is hard question time, I guess it's my turn to dig into you a little bit.
Uh-oh. Go ahead.
So I'm one of those players that logs into the game, and I like the game to just run smoothly. Like, I don't know any of the back-end stuff. I really don't care any of the back-end stuff about any of the back-end stuff. I just want my game to run smoothly. So, at this point, I guess my question is, are we going to fix the fact that my character still runs on top of my mount, or is that just a permanent
No!
It's a feature, man.
Do you guys want us to fix it?
If they don't want it fixed, can we make it a freaking achievement?
At this point, it's kind of like an Easter egg. It's been in the game for as long as I can remember. It's probably not going to get fixed anytime soon.
What about the one where your character literally humps the ground?
That's an achievement.
We might look at that one, but
humps
we'll
the ground.
See. It's not.
You want to demonstrate that for us?
Yes, please demonstrate. Please don't take this from us.
You haven't seen that one?
Family show, ma'am.
Does that have role-play repercussions? Can you pull it out? So Rich, what about update 26, the base game patch that's coming with Greymoor? Are there any performance updates coming for that one?
Yeah.
No, not at all. Okay. Moving on.
We've got those on our roadmap. I think one of the big things there is the multi-core support. You know, getting in there and really utilizing more cores on your CPU to better offload the work of the game, so that things can load a bit faster, a little bit more optimally.
I have something here in my notes about AoE ability types more specialized on the server. What does that mean?
My eyes just glazed over.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the engineering team and the combat team have been working on is looking at how area of effect abilities are run on the server. You know, when you cast an area of effect, there's, you know, the area, and it's got to pick, you know, how many players are in there, who's the right targets. And so they optimized that specific type of ability so that it just runs better on the server.
That sounds like it would have pretty big impact
There
on
is potential
Cyrodiil.
for it, to really improve things.
In a good way, yes. Cool.
All right, well, we don't want to take too much more of your time. You know, you have a lot of interviews to do, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We are actually going to swap Rich out with Mike Finnegan,
Upgrade.
but while we do that... Show's about to really start and get good, so we're going to show you a short video.
He's just going to sit here and be quiet and not talk.
I highly doubt that. So we're going to show you guys a quick video while we swap these guys out.
This year-long adventure into the Dark Heart of Skyrim starts with Harrowstorm, which focuses on 2 dungeons, Icereach and Unhallowed Grave. Discovering the mysteries in these 2 dungeons are a gateway to the larger Dark Heart of Skyrim. Icereach is this island in the middle of the Sea of Ghosts, and there's this mysterious storm swirling about. So an expedition was sent there to figure out what's going on, and they haven't returned.
Once the player arrives on the island in search of the missing expeditionary force, they come across Lyr's Titanborn, and they team up with her in order to discover what the witches are doing on the island and put a stop to this mysterious storm. As you travel across the island, you're going to come across multiple witches, each with their own type of magic.
Some are going to use fire. Some are going to use electricity. And they also have other minions and creatures that they're going to bring to fights.
Unhallowed Grave is this mass burial of bones that has been underground and sealed away for thousands of years by the Pyre Watch. And it's been so long that what exactly is down here is actually unknown to them.
And they appointed people to watch over it. They had one job to do, and they couldn't do that right because somebody broke in.
Not only is the player going to have to deal with the Nordic mercenaries, but the defenders that the ancient Pyre Watch left here to guard the tomb. And you are discovering what was left down here and what the Nordic mercenaries are looking for.
Better than mine.
So well in place.
That's the goal.
Hi, Finn!
Hey!
Look who we found.
Look who we found. Everybody welcome Mike Finnegan, Dungeon Lead. I see you got the memo about what color we needed to wear.
Yes, everybody has to wear black.
Coordinated.
Dark Heart of Skyrim.
Nice.
Rich was wearing green. I don't know how he slipped through.
So we just watched a video about the Harrowstorm DLC.
We did.
Your team is working on a couple of dungeons for that. We're going to talk about those in just a minute. But first we want to dive into a brand new system, which we think maybe you guys want to hear a little bit more about, coming with Greymoor, called Antiquities.
Heck yeah.
So Lehman, let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so Antiquities are really rad. I'm really excited about it. It's a really awesome system. I know Rich spoke about it at length during the thing, but basically when you break it down, it's 2 mini games that allow you as a player to travel around Tamriel and find all sorts of really cool stuff. And cool stuff includes, things that you can put in your house.
Like this.
Like this guy right here, Ruby Dragon Skull.
That is awesome.
All sorts of things like emotes, and then things that players can use in combat. A little bit of something for everybody.
So let's talk a little bit about how the system works, because it is a little bit confusing when you first hear about it. So how do you kind of get started with Antiquities?
Right, so when you get into the Dark Heart of Skyrim and you go to Solitude for the first time, there's a group called the Antiquarian Circle, and you go and you speak to them, and they'll run you through a short tutorial that introduces you to both minigames. You get a chance to hang out with fan favorite Gabrielle. We haven't seen her in a long time.
Ah, from the base game, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. So
she's been busy getting this whole system together.
Yeah, I know, there you go. I knew they were in the house.
It's like the bride side, all the Gabrielle fans.
So yeah, you get to hang out with her. She walks you through the system, and then you're pretty much off to the races. You get to go find cool stuff from every historical era of Tamriel.
I got a question about the way that actually works, because I admittedly suck at this game. So
I'm glad we brought you on the show.
False modesty.
How'd you get on stage?
In regards to the minigame, if you're better at the minigame, or worse at the minigame, does it change the way that your rewards are delivered to you?
No, I mean, during the minigame, you can redo it if you don't think that you've done a good enough job. And it's not going to be there's not going to be a large barrier of entry for players. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, I messed up on the Antiquarian's Eye and I'll never find anything. We try to keep it accessible for everyone so that everybody can take part in the system.
So it's no adult tantrums like I have in VMA.
Well, no, but to mention what he said, I mean, there is a skill element to it, a mastery element to it, where you're going to get better the more you do it and the more you practice. A lot like VMA. Well, some people.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, there's a mastery element to it that we want you to kind of like focus on and get better at doing this.
Including 2 skill lines that are specific to the Antiquity system itself.
Awesome.
So we kind of heard this when Rich was up on stage, but I think anytime a new system like this is added to a game, players being able to question, is this going to be scalable? Rich mentioned it very briefly, but like it's going to be in the old world, it's going to be in Skyrim. Is this something we are going to maybe see going forward as well?
Absolutely. That's one of the coolest things about it is that it's kind of baked into the cake of Tamriel generally. So it'll drive you back to previous zones you haven't been in.
Tamriel's a cake, FYI.
It is a cake. It's a cake of many layers. It's a many-layered cake. But yeah, you're going to go back to every region of Tamriel that you've been before, and the antiquities that you find there are appropriate to the space that you're in. So if you go back to Alakir, maybe you'll find an ancient Yokuden relic. If you go to, if you're hanging out in Skyrim, you might find something from Atmora. So there's all sorts of really interesting, like really deep dive historical lore things.
I don't know if you find any Imperial stuff, because Imperials don't really have a homeland.
Yikes.
Personal attack.
So security, make sure Ranger has to come on stage, please.
So this sounds like it's the biggest non-combat activity that we've added to the game since housing.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
And it's something that if you need to take some time off and you don't want to be, killing a bunch of things, it's kind of a Zen activity. You can go out, hang out, and the things that you find, though, apply to any kind of game style that you can think of. So you have things that you can get in the Antiquity system that are great for combat, things in the Antiquity system that you can get that are great for furnishing your house. There's a little bit of something for everybody, so everybody will be able to engage in the system and have a really good time.
I think Rich mentioned, what's that?
No.
It's bound.
Good question.
They're bound.
That's an excellent
They're bind on equipped, the items that you get. They're bind on account.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think Rich mentioned the siege weapon for PvP. That's a brand new siege weapon that players can get.
It's really rad
cool.
too.
Yeah,
I've seen it. It's nuts.
He also mentioned the special mount that you can get, and this is only available through Antiquities. We actually have a screenshot if you guys want to see it. I love it.
It is.
So yeah, you can only get that mount through Antiquities, and it's pretty badass. It's not like your basic horse, so it's cool.
Another thing Rich mentioned was the mythic items, and I kind of want to touch on that because they're one-piece items. You can only wear one of them, so you could equip it. And the idea behind the mythic items is not just combat related or anything like that. Sometimes it's going to change how you play the game. So when he mentioned the jewelry piece that increases your your non-combat speed by double. I mean, that's perfect for people going out in the world and hunting crafting nodes and doing everything like that. So they're going to be able to zip through the world and do stuff. So it's kind of going to, these items are not just designed to like, I'm better in combat. They're also designed to cater to different kinds of gameplay.
That's cool. I heard a question from the crowd. The mount, is it something that you get whole, or do you you find pieces and put it together?
I
Do you remember?
believe that you put it together.
Put it together? Okay.
More details at 11.
Yeah, TBD. We will have a full article on this.
Absolutely.
Like we usually do for new systems.
That sounds like it's player testable on
It
PTS.
sure does.
So being kind of a lore hound, I do have a question about the Antiquities and the lore perspective. Is there a way in game for us to kind of track the things that we found and where we're going with finding some of these relics?
So one of the coolest things about the system is that we're as lore is developed, it's delivered through the world in our game. We don't come in and say this is what it is. As you're finding things, there are different characters who will add text to a journal where they'll explain, oh, we think it's this, we think it's that, we think it came from here. Well, I don't know. And so there's going to be a lot of
lore in a nutshell.
Exactly. So that ambiguity is going to be carried through the whole thing, and so there'll be a lot to read and a lot to learn as we go along.
And yeah, it does add on to it as you progress through it.
Exactly.
So that you can get more bits of that lore.
I honestly see like guilds being formed after this system. I truly do. For the true lore hounds out there.
They all work together.
Calling out UESP and the Imperial Library.
Is there going to be an Antiquity Seekers podcast?
I mean,
idea.
The fact
a segment.
the fact that this appeals to so many players. I mean, we've talked 3 times now at this point, but the fact that there's PvE, PvP, all of this, it brings together the community at large into this, and I think that's something the game has needed. So huge kudos.
Yeah, I know you've talked a lot about on your
I
streams
may
about
have.
like we'd really like something to do that isn't just questing
Another
or combat.
activity.
So yeah.
Well, you don't want to fish all day long?
I mean, fishing's great, but now we can dig.
Yeah.
But it does go to show to tag on to
It's like digging is like fishing in the dirt.
It's like fishing in the dirt.
There's your quote for the day.
There you go, right?
Tattoo that on you, Vegas.
All right, so as just mentioned, we will definitely have an article on the website explaining Antiquities when it gets a little bit closer to PTS. This is in quarter 2 with the chapter. So let's move on a little bit to the vampire. We want to kind of sink our teeth into.
And the crowd groans.
I'll be here all night until 6.
We're revamping the vampires.
Yeah, so vampire skill line, as Rich mentioned, is undergoing some changes. So what's sort of the goal behind, I hate to say it again, but revamping the vampire?
Well, it's to make vampirism feel more visceral. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we're presenting kind of a power fantasy for every kind of vampire through the new skill line. So there's abilities where you can mesmerize people like Count Dracula. There's abilities where you can, take life away from people in a really kind of like feral way, like with, this crazy eviscerate slash. So everybody who wants to get a real sense of what it's like to be a vampire in Tamriel, this is a great place to do it. So as Rich mentioned before, we're doing all these new animations, paired animations where you can, jump on people and drink their blood and stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and we've also gone back in the Vampire Quest tutorial and revamped it to.
I know it's hard.
That joke just comes out of nowhere.
Keeps going.
Last year it was elsewhere. Every time somebody talked about it, I'm going to go elsewhere.
Now we're revamping.
But yeah, so the quest is going to bring you up to speed on how the new system works, and it's really sweet. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's also like Vampire before was cool and all, but it was kind of like one passive, right? Like people got this, and then they kind of hung out, got this passive, the undeath passive, and they're like, all right, I'm just gonna hang out with that and get my magicka back or whatever that is.
It's a lot more active.
So now it's more active. Actually, we've even kind of flipped the script a little bit. Like before, the less you fed, the stronger you got. And then in the new vampire line, in order to make it active, the more you feed, the stronger you get. So we're kind of flipping around that paradigm that if you want to be a vampire and you want to be a badass vampire, you have to feed and get stronger.
And your look changes too, right? As you
yes,
feed more.
and that's another thing too, is before your look would change the less you feed, and now it's the more you feed, your look will change. That's it. We're done here.
Thank you and good night. Okay, so you guys know I'm a huge quester, a huge lore nerd. I do all that. I don't spend my time dancing in Alinor.
Hey, that's for later.
So we have this amazing statue of Vampire Lord sitting there.
We do.
But we were also taught in previous Skyrim that they're kind of very rare and they're not something we approach. I'm sure some community members are out there wondering, how are you guys approaching it without making it feel overly normalized or anything like that?
Yeah, I know. Should we get into the ult for?
We might as well.
I think you should.
Rich said he didn't want to spoil it.
I'm sorry,
but
Rich.
that's him.
I'm sorry.
That's not us. That was the main show. We're the post show.
So I'll spoil it. The ult for the vampire skill line is that the player is able to turn into what we're calling a blood scion, which is
a vampire lord.
One of those guys.
Which is a vampire lord.
And it's really rad.
That's the ultimate.
It is the ultimate.
That's the ult. Yeah.
And there's definitely been a lot of debate in the lore community about, is the vampire lord form, is that exclusive to the Volkihar clan that we see in Test 5? Mother Lame is the kind of the mother of vampires. She can manifest her vampiric powers in a lot of different ways. And since the player gets their powers directly from Lame and the right of the Scion or whatever, she gives you that ability to turn into that form. So, the lore's sound. Don't worry, it's we're in good shape.
We got this.
It's almost like we have a lore master to keep watch on.
Talking about lore, because I'm pretty sure it's pretty clear that I'm a pretty big lore nerd.
No way.
But anyway, I want to ask a question specifically about all the different vampire clans, because you did mention the Volkihar clan, and if you're going to open the door, I'm going to go right through it. So, my question is specifically in Skyrim, are we going to see anything? It sounds like all of the different skills that we're going to get are kind of different in each way. Are they reminiscent of some of the different vampire clans that are present in Skyrim and throughout Tamriel?
Absolutely. So we're not going to deal a lot with the Volkihar clan. They've got, Lord Harkon has a lot of plans that are in long-term development. He's
in pre-pro right now.
Yes. But the iconic vampirism abilities are all going to be present. So vampiric drain, the ability to feed like you would in previous titles, and so you're definitely going to feel like all the greatest hits of vampirism in Tamriel are represented for sure.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah! That was exciting.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Awesome. So it sounds like vampires have a lot to look forward to in the next chapter. So we want to talk about how does this fit into the overall chapter. We want to talk a bit more about Greymoor and the zone in which it takes place. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Sure.
We're going to use dig in a lot, aren't we?
Yeah. Let's sink our teeth in.
Let's sink our teeth in.
So Skyrim that we present in Greymoor and the Dark Heart of Skyrim is, obviously it's almost 1,000 years before the events of Test 5. So the situation is very different. Rather than a battle between the Stormcloaks and the Imperials, you have this kind of Cold War brewing between West and East. In the East, you've got King Yoren, who everybody knows him from our original release. He's hanging out in the Ebonheart Pact with the Dark Elves and the Argonians. Now we're heading west. The High King there are actually two High Kings right now. So the High King in the west is King Svargrim. And the West is much more isolationist. They're much more, kind of standoffish. But they're very proud Nords. They're Nords. When they talk about death and Sovngarde, they mean it. So players will get a chance to hang out with this different group of Nords, and the way that the power struggle between Svargrim and what's going on with the rest of the world plays a big role in the quest itself.
What about the art direction? So there's going to be areas that people have seen before in the Elder Scrolls V, and then there's going to be some newer areas that they haven't really experienced before. So what was kind of the general art direction for our version of Skyrim?
I think that hits the nail on the head, right? It's presenting Skyrim in a way that's unique to Elder Scrolls Online. So you get the best of Test 5, and going back to kind of the greatest hits of it's Solitude, it's Blackreach,
You've got Labyrinthian. There's all these really cool places that you can go. But we've also, like I said, it's 1,000 years in the past, so there's a little bit the things that are a little bit different.
So there's just enough that if people played TS5, that they'll get it. Like you go to
You'll
Solitude and you kind of
recognize
see is every house in the same place? I don't know, you know what I mean? But like
I've walked through it, and it's
I mean, Solitude's a different thing. But as you're going through, like some of these little like shacks and stuff like that might not be there because they haven't been built yet or something like that. But very much like you walk through the major points into the major cities, and you're going to recognize. It's a lot like we did in Morrowind or any of the other areas.
Yeah. Can we take a moment though to talk about the fact?
Absolutely, Kyle. We could take a moment.
Let's do it. Let's have a moment.
Let's take a moment,
So
Kyle.
I think Rich actually set this up earlier, but this zone is split in a very interesting way because people in the community were speculating. Dark Heart of Skyrim, does that mean we are in Blackreach? What does that mean? A 60-40 split, I believe, is what we're looking at. That's insane. What inspired that kind of huge dynamic shift like that?
Well, I mean, I think Blackreach is just a really cool area. Players got a chance to run around in there. You've got, giant glowing mushrooms and Dwemer ruins, and we were able to build upon that and, add even more Blackreach and different types of biomes. Like you saw during the video, Greymoor Keep is kind of a warmer palette. So you've got different types of cave environments to explore, and I've been running around in there, during development, and it's wild. It does not feel small. It feels big.
And that's also part of like the story. Also, very much drives this kind of thing. So like, as you go into Blackreach and stuff like that, it's not. It's not forced or anything like that. The story is driving you down there. It makes sense. If we're talking about vampires, this is a place that doesn't get light. It just makes sense that that's where they would build their kingdom, kind of thing.
So speaking of not getting light, I imagine that would allude to the fact that we're possibly going to see Falmer in Blackreach.
They're
tough questions.
It's during our time period, Falmer. This is not Test 5. When people talk about Falmer, that's ghost stories like, there's these weird things that come out of the ground sometimes, and I think they ate Joe's goat a few weeks ago.
That's pretty much every Falmer story.
Yeah, exactly. It all ends in a goat.
They ate Joe's goat.
But there's a pretty good chance that the player might encounter some Falmer along the way.
I got a question because you guys sent out these amazing maps to the community members, and many people here spent hours speculating.
Did they?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh boy, and they did a great job.
There's like entire algorithms put in place for this.
Any chance we can know what those maps actually mean?
Should we reveal all at this point?
You guys want us to? Okay.
So when you put those maps together, I think the community did an amazing job of translating the data. We did not make it easy for you.
Good job. Good job.
So great work.
Next year, 400 different maps.
So when a lot of people were pretty much there, when you line up those maps in exactly the right way, if you take a look at it, the markings on the map correspond to the major locations in the Greymoor chapter. So you've got Morthal, Solitude, Dragon Bridge, and a number of spots that might become relevant during the quest.
There are some parts that you might look at and go, oh, what's this? And you'll figure it out.
You will.
Can I just say, Daedric is really freaking hard to decrypt?
I got to tell you, man, hats off, because they did not make it easy for you.
I'm not that smart. Man, it was hard to decrypt some of that stuff.
Educating people, right?
Right, that's what it is.
Everybody should get on Duolingo. And
that's right. Yeah, take the Daedric course in Duolingo. Yeah.
So you touched on the time period a little bit. So how did the general time period in ESO versus Skyrim, like what's going on during this time period when Greymoor takes place, and how did that inspire the tone and the general vibe of the zone?
Yeah, it's a really cool time in Tamrielic history for a lot of reasons. There's a lot going on. In Skyrim, like I said, there's you've got that Cold War brewing between the two halves of Skyrim, and a lot of times one of the cool things about doing what we do is we're able to tease, hey, this is how things might resolve, and there are things that happen in this quest that might kind of determine the trajectory of the region generally.
So, for those of you who are wondering, how is Skyrim gonna stitch the wounds back together again and see how things are going? And over the course of the year, you might figure some of that out. But yeah, in terms of tone, the Western Skyrim it's a hard place. It's a cold place full of grumpy people.
It's a dead planet. It's a bug planet.
Do you want to know more?
Do you want to know more?
And Rich mentioned a bit that it's a bit similar to Rivenspire in tone
Absolutely.
and style too.
Yeah, that gothic tone I think is
like
where we were
grittier,
going with that feel
darker,
of like
grittier,
you're walking into Vampire Land.
Yep.
That's what
Now,
we're
is there
going
any
for.
bleed over from any of the other
Bleed!
stories?
I get it, bleed.
Is there any crossover between any of the stories that we may have already played through in the base game and to what we're going to experience in Skyrim?
Well,
the inclusion of Lyra's Titanborn, that's a big one.
Big Lyris.
No Lyris mount, sorry.
No Lyris
mount.
Are there any other returning characters? I know Rich mentioned a few.
Well, like Rich said, everybody's favorite dark elf to hate, Narcissus Dren's back.
Dren is back.
We've got Narama, we've got Rigger, we've got Lyra's Titanborn. There's a ton of characters who are gonna come back to the players.
Some members of the Raven Watch?
Yeah, including, like, speaking of Rivenspire, we've got some members of the Raven Watch who might show up.
You'll have to wait and see who they are.
Yes, you will have to wait and see who they are.
So I saw somebody mention when we were playing the CG trailer at the start of the show, some people in Twitch chat were like, who's that woman and why is she so big? Like, she is
Who's that
some people may not understand, right? So do you want to get into why she is just towering over everybody else?
Well, first I'll say you guys should play the main quests of the original game. That'll explain it all. But yeah, she has giant blood in her veins, and that makes her real big.
Yep.
She's our snow lily.
She's our snow lily, yes. She's a badass.
She is. She is really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to shift our focus a little bit from Greymoor and Skyrim the Zone, talk a little bit more about the trial. That's the 12-player content. So Kyne's Aegis is the trial coming in the Greymoor chapter. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that? Which I know I don't have to beg you to talk a little bit more.
Talking about a trial? Why, whatever should I say? Yeah, so Kyne's Aegis it takes place on an island that actually is in TS5 Skyrim, but it's just an island you can go to and mine and stuff like that. So what this is where what the island was before it became a barren wasteland. And what it is it's in the north of Skyrim, and it's like a bulwark. That's why it gets the name Kyne's Aegis, which is the shield from the north of Skyrim. So it's there to fishing and mining, but also to protect against northern invaders. And coincidentally, that's what you're doing when you get there, is you're repelling a northern invasion or an invasion from somewhere.
So let's talk a little bit about the size. Is it similar to any previous trials?
Yeah, I think that when we hit Elsewhere, we got that was a good model going forward.
Sunspire.
What did I say?
Elsewhere.
Yeah, Elsewhere. No, the whole trial is as big as Elsewhere. It's 475 bosses. It's crazy. No, it's as big as Sunspire. There are 3 bosses. There's 3 hard modes. Unlike Sunspire, it has a more linear approach where you go from boss 1, 2, and 3. You can't take the first 2 in any order. We think that size was pretty good, and people had a good experience when they go through there. Also, the 3 different hard modes gave this level of varying levels of difficulty that people could challenge themselves and push themselves. So as they get through one hard mode, then they can go and try another hard mode. If they can't do it, they're not out anything. They can just complete it on Veteran.
Important question for all the collectors out there of mounts, pets, everything in between. Last year with Sunspire, you introduced a mount behind an achievement.
Behind the big achievement.
Yes, the big one. Are we looking at something similar this year?
We are indeed. It will be just as hard as Sunspire's achievement, so it's not going to be for everybody, but it's going to be pretty cool.
Why are you looking at me?
Why do you have a guilty conscience, Cash? Why do you have a guilty conscience?
I can teach how to dance. And
Kyle's offering dance lessons. It'll be behind some of the hardest content, but we are planning on doing that again. And, I'm not going to tell exactly what it is yet, but it's going to be pretty cool.
You don't know. It is cool.
I do know. How dare you?
What about other types of rewards for those of us that maybe aren't good enough to get them out?
We got the standard, we're going to have a skin reward, we're going to have the armors and all that jazz that we normally do. So all that super special stuff that we always throw in the trials.
Right on.
Have y'all done anything new or different with the trial?
Nope. I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course.
Very boring.
Very boring. So
back a box feature.
Commonly, people kind of skip the base pop, or they blow through it and they just kind of group stack and kill and stuff like that. So we've played some extra focus on the base pop to make it a little bit more challenging. Players have to kind of think about that stuff.
Think.
Yes. I know. It's new and different.
Ben, can you talk to me like I'm a kindergartner? What the heck is base pop?
So base pop is
should I sit base pop?
I'll answer this question, then you get your crackers. All right? So base pop is commonly referred to as trash. It is all of the not bosses in the dungeon. So
now
it's the monsters that, now you get it. Now you get it. I don't call it trash because they have feelings.
But things like really matter.
Don't tell me that, then I feel bad. I don't feel bad.
So for our final segment, we are going to talk a little bit about the first DLC coming, Harrowstorm.
Yeah.
So this is really our only opportunity to sort of give a preview of this DLC before it hits the PTS. So next week, yes, very exciting. Frantically trying to get everything.
Where's my tear jar? Oh, I can use this.
Reliquary of Tears.
Reliquary of Tears.
So let's start with Icereach, which is one of the dungeons that is in this DLC.
One of the great things about doing these dungeons is
he gets to have me as a writer.
Lehman got to be my writer for this. Who gets to have the lore master as their lead writer for this?
Well, that's what you used to do before you were lore master, right?
Yeah.
Don't diminish his accomplishment. It's still great.
He's still wonderful. You matter. So let's talk a little bit about Icereach. What's kind of the history behind that?
Yeah, so Icereach is another island in the Sea of Ghosts where the Icereach Coven basically has their base. You guys might remember Droda from previous dungeon content.
Dire Frost,
this is where her coven, that's the seat of their power. And the player is directed to go, Yorin, the Skald King, sent a bunch of Nords to check out this island because there's this huge storm brewing and it was sinking ships, and the people who went out to go see what was going on, they never came home. So the player goes out, meets up along the way with Lyra's Titanborn, and it wrecks faces and solves the mystery.
Sea of Ghosts, and people didn't come back.
I know,
right? It's hard to believe, right?
Pikachu face.
Right? So, wait, I'm smelling a trend here. So we're building off of Dire Frost. So you guys, I saw Selene last time.
Yep.
You know, that's a continuation, wrapping that.
Thoraya from Wrathstone Dungeons.
Exactly. So are you guys moving in that direction of kind of giving some of these plots extra parts?
I mean, we always like to kind of take a look at not just the past of our game, but the past of Elder Scrolls games, and bring it. We did it with kind of, if you look at the Elder Scrolls past, Fang Lair, which was in, I think, Arena, and then we brought that kind of like into our world. Using things that we've had in previous dungeons, kind of fleshing out their stories and telling them and finishing them. So Droda of Icereach had an interesting story in Dire Frost, but now you get to see where she came from and her sisters in the coven that she came from.
Awesome. Dungeons is a really big thing for me, and
I'm glad to hear that, guys.
I know our guild loves the dungeons. We actually go into lore mode and just kind of slow down, and we absorb the story, which we really love. Layman, please say that you're proud of me for doing this.
I'm super proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
Everybody's proud of him. That's all we're doing.
Were you just fishing for compliments? Is that what you were doing?
I'm setting you up.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's a minuscule pet peeve, but I do have a pet peeve.
Oh.
Some of the NPCs, particularly Thoraya, hide behind a freaking rock while we're doing all the work in these dungeons. So my question is, can we expect Lyra's Titanborn to help us?
So that's a big thing for the characters that we're dealing with. Thariah is very much scholarly and she didn't kind of get her hands dirty. Right. But Lyris is a badass. And she absolutely will
She's not gonna hide behind a rock.
She is not going to hide behind a rock. She's not going to be a damsel in distress. You don't you don't save
like,
her
"Get out of my
or
way."
anything like that. What's pretty funny is you meet up with her. You're not following her. She's not grouping up with you or anything like that. But what it is you're going through different parts of this island, and she's going through. So when you meet up with her, it's like in a swath of blood as she's just cleaved like several people, and then she comes up and talks to you and she's like, I got shit to do. You know, like, and she goes off, kills some more people. So what's pretty funny is the stuff that you go through when you get to fight, you can imagine she did 10 times worse shit.
I don't think there's a scene that she shows up in that she doesn't murder
cleave somebody to death.
It's
exactly right. It's exactly right. Every time you see her, she's killing somebody.
All right, so let's move on to Unhallowed Grave, which is the other dungeon.
Yes,
in
that's
this
the one you
DLC.
saw with the grappling hook.
Yeah.
Yes, that's how you use grapple hook.
Grappling hook.
Yep.
It's the universal grappling hook symbol.
All right, so what's going on in this dungeon?
You grappling hook.
That's it. That's all you do. Just grapple hook around everywhere.
That's it. Let's go in circles.
You want to explain?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we're taking it away, Lehman. Anytime somebody brings up grappling hooks, I'm just totally shut down. The dungeon is a deep, dark cave in Bankarai where something has been buried away for a long time. So long, in fact, that the people who are guarding this grave, in large part, don't know what it is. And it's a dark, horrible grave that a number of Nord mercenaries are taking ashes and bones and stuff out of it, and you're tasked with learning what the heck is going on, why are they doing that, and trying to put a stop to it.
That's pretty much it.
Well, wait, there's a little extra though, I think. Someone told me there's some mysteries down there that you might have to try extra hard to find.
So this is one of those things that we're trying to avoid because I really want to watch streams and stuff like that of people figuring things out. But there are some secrets in here that are going to be great.
You don't want to take a long look around when you're heading through the
Yes,
Okay,
there's
don't stare
all
at the
kinds of cool
wall.
stuff in here.
Got it.
Finn, I know the grappling hook really tickles you.
Yeah,
It tickles us, don't get me wrong, it really tickles us.
something.
You have a grappling hook that tickles
it
you?
tickles us.
That's awesome.
I'm just saying.
We've gotten to
It's a family stream.
See?
Here's my question, sir.
By all means, ask about the tickle hook.
There is nothing more satisfying than finding a spot way above your head that you cannot travel to and
Correct.
using that grappling hook and just flying to that spot.
Yeah.
So we love that mechanic. We're happy to see that mechanic is going into some of the dungeon content.
Well, wait till you play.
In other words, there's something big at the very top where we grapple to. I get it. But is that type of mechanic or more creative things like that something that we can look forward to as dungeons evolve in ESO?
So yes and no. So whenever we do a dungeon and put together some pieces and stuff like that, we always take a look at how we can challenge and create new gameplay. Moongrave Fane is a good example. We had the moving block, and we got the idea to putting this on pressure plates to open gates and stuff like that. So when we saw the grappling hook going in for Dragonhold, we're like, all right, we got to take that. We got to see what we could do with that in a dungeon. And we did. And we kicked it up kind of. It's not just traversal. It's used in boss fights. It's used in new and interesting ways in boss fights. There's all kinds of like cool new traversal elements to it. We're going to challenge your dexterity. Yeah, I know, right?
That's it for me.
But as far as mechanics like that, we're always looking for new and interesting mechanics we can throw in there. And it's absolutely, if we see something that we think is going to be cool and new and interesting and fun to use, we're absolutely going to use it.
Well,
What about rewards? What can you get from these dungeons?
We have the standard items that you can get, the rewards like item sets and stuff like that. But so the two rewards for the completing veteran versions of these dungeons in Icereach, you get a weapon motif. That's the first time we've offered the weapon style.
And it's a good one.
You get Lyris's battle axe as a weapon style.
Nice.
That's cool.
And for Unhallowed Grave, we actually have these really cool new body markings, which are they're like textured red that look super cool when you put them on and stuff. And they're body markings, so they kind of play well with skins too. So you can actually, I'm interested to see what people kind of put together
Combinations,
combinations with this stuff too. So. That's and then there might be some other stuff.
Exciting.
New sets.
Oh,
There are new
item
sets.
Yes.
I don't have them.
Check it out in the patch notes.
Yeah. You
there's
guys will be able to
new,
check out the patch
PTS
notes.
next
There's
week.
new
PTS next
item
week?
sets, and there's also Cyrodiil crafted sets.
In the update 25.
Yep. Yeah, so that'll all be detailed in the patch notes coming next week. Cyrodiil.
Yes.
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else you guys
You guys
wanted
have
to
any
bring
other
up.
questions for us?
No.
How hard is the new dungeons compared to the last two?
I wasn't asking you.
Does anybody have any questions up here?
Wait.
Who's that
So
guy?
how hard is the new dungeon?
Let me add to what Gan's calling out, though. So in the past, you and I have had this conversation before.
We have.
So
I think
you know what I'm saying. In the past, there's been kind of the trifecta achievements, completing hard mode, speed run, no death. Now, you kind of moved away from that a little bit in the last year's dungeons. Is that seeing a return? Can we expect something like that?
You mean as far so we have those achievements,
right?
And we're tying. We kind of like the incentive aspect of adding a title to it rather than the overall overarching reward. And that's mainly because we want to get more people to be able to feel good about running these dungeons and running these rewards and stuff like that. So, and we only have so much time to do all of this thing. So if it was up to me, every achievement would have its own. Like, we don't have that much time. So, and we want to incentivize doing these. These are like the landmark achievements. So, like, oh, I want to do this because this is the thing I get. So we're going to incentivize that. But for the most part, the veteran is going to keep that cosmetic reward, and then the title is going to be offered for the pinnacle kind of thing. A lot along the lines of Godslayer and Godslayers and Sunspire and stuff like that. It's such a cool title that can stand by itself.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I got a quick question for Lehman, and it's switching gears a little bit. I wanted to talk just real quick about the prologue quest and how that prologue quest and the lore kind of ties into grabbing you in and just throwing you right into a lot of the parts of the Skyrim that we're going to be able to explore, such as Blackreach. How does that tie in if you're a starting player just getting right into that prologue?
Well, I mean, the purpose of a prologue is to kind of whet your appetite for the chapter that's upcoming. So there are elements, one of the cool things about Harrowstorm is there are elements of the dungeons that kind of tie into the prologue. So there are things that you discover in the dungeons which inform the prologue activities and the quest there. And I think by the end of your time doing the prologue quest, you're going to have a really good idea of, who are the major players, what is the major, plot that we're going to have to dig into during the chapter release. So, I can't wait to hear what people have to say about it.
They kind of like Wrathstone, but it's a little bit more obscure. So like in Wrathstone, you got both halves of the Wrathstone, and you're like, oh, these are two things of this. And then you go to the prologue, and he's like, all right, this is what it is. And you're like, oh, that's cool. So in the dungeons, you're actually finding two pieces that you don't necessarily know how these two things relate until you do the prologue. And then when you do the prologue, and you kind of see the two things you get, and you're like, oh, that's what it was. And it conveniently explains the name of the DLC too.
That's the beginning of the Dark Heart of Skyrim.
That's one of the coolest things about those dungeons is at first glance, they don't look like they're connected at all. Right. And over the course of the prologue, it all gets tied together.
And part of the whole DLC, I mean, when we announced the DLC, it's update 25 of Harrowstorm. People are like, the F is a Harrowstorm, right? So you're like, yeah, well, after you play through all of it, you'll be like, oh, I know what a Harrowstorm is now. And then you'll be like a lore buff.
Yep.
And you'll get to see actual Harrowstorm.
Somebody will be like, what's a Harrowstorm? I'll be like, I know what this is. I know what this is.
You'll get to actually see them in the chapter in Greymoor.
Yes, Harrowstorms? Absolutely.
Harrowstorms.
You get to see Harrowstorms in the chapter.
That,
Yep.
They're big.
They're up there. They're up there.
So we want to thank
I think everybody in the audience literally looked up.
There they are. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in, both on the stream and in our audience. This was super
thank you guys.
fun. Yes. And we want to thank our special guests too for having Finn, Lehman, Kyle, Cash. Thank you so much for joining us on our stream. It was really
And
fun.
Rich Lambert.
Rich Lambert is off doing interviews.
Yes.
It's off an interview. And Gary.
Who's Gary?
Do you want to come out, Gary? No? Oh, okay. As Gina mentioned, thank you all so much. And everybody here, this has been so special for us. This has been our first live audience. It's so cool.
So awesome.
we can't wait to do it again.
Love the energy in here. You guys are doing great.
It's really great to be here. Seriously.
We just get all of you guys to follow us around all the time, just cheering when we do shit. That's great.
I'm going to make a sandwich.
And don't forget, you can pre-purchase the Greymoor chapter right now, and we have a lot of good information on the ElderScrollsOnline.com, including a full SKU article, which will help you see which version is right for you, what's in the CE, and everything you need to know.
And don't forget, we do have a few streamers that are going to be streaming live from this event. Alcast and Ninja614 are starting up first in about 20 minutes, and then we'll have KPal all the way from the UK.
KPal.
KPal and Kyle will be streaming in about 2 hours, so they'll be live from the event. Be sure and check out their channels. They're going to have maybe some exclusive dev time.
What?
Maybe.
Maybe some pop-ins.
Maybe whether they want it or not, they'll have
You're going to see a Finn face just...
Just poking through.
Slowly get in there. Yeah.
Can I talk again, please? All right, so we will see everyone on PTS next week, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.